This episode is sponsored by Launch. Are you an insurance agent that is tired of quoting business to try and find a better premium to win new deals? Are you looking for a way to differentiate and stand out from your competition? Well, look no further than Launch. Launch is an industry-leading software platform that gives you pre-built assessments that you can walk through with your prospect. Launch automatically calculates your prospect's risk score, and this allows you to show your prospect the areas you can fix to negotiate better premium and coverage with underwriters. Offer more value to your clients, turn missed sales into closed business, and most of all, become a better advisor to your clients. Visit getlaunch.io today to get more information on how you can use Launch to win more BORs starting right now. That's getlaunch.io to learn more.
Welcome to the Getting Past the Premium podcast, where we focus on breaking down risk management problems bit by bit until we find a solution. If you would like to discuss anything you hear on GPP with us, please reach out using the links in the description. Enjoy today's episode.
All right, well, welcome back to the show, Kylie. Good to have you back.
Hey,
Second conversation.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, the last time we talked, it was right before the Nebraska OU game, and so far, I think OU's gotten the Nebraska curse after we talked.
We'll see. I've got I've got high hopes for our team, and we're gonna play Kansas this weekend, and we'll just see if we can bounce back here.
There you go. I got faith. Well, we were talking, I know that we got some good feedback on our last conversation around some of the conversations you had about how you guys segment your book and how you kind of specialize in different areas, and how that segmentation then leads to handling things like small business really effectively and how you handle that. So kind of wanted to start just our conversation around that, because I think you guys are doing some unique stuff there. So let's start high level, and just when we kind of say how you segment your book and that specialization and stuff, just kind of what do you mean by that? And you know, how can we frame that conversation in a little bit?
Yeah. So when we think about like segmenting a book of business, right? You know, it doesn't matter if you're a 40 branch brokerage or a, you know, single mom and pop shop. I think that understanding your book of business and what your customer make is, right, within that book of business is really important, because although, you know, from a customer service standpoint and a, you know, brand and, you know, just a mission statement, and most of the time, like our value statements as a brokerage and agency is to give service levels to everybody in your book. And if you don't know who makes up your book of business, if you don't know what your clientele looks like, so we're talking, what do they do, right? Are you writing mostly, it can be as high level as you want, all the way to very, very granular like we do. It's how much business are you writing, commercial versus personal, right? We handle commercial P&C, commercial EB. We write personal lines. Then we break that down into size generally. Size generally is kind of the next level. Size or industry.
Okay, so size as in, though, like revenue size to you, premium size, or size of the company as in?
Size. We generally look at it as the size of company. It's kind of one of the same. Yeah. We generally, for demographical sake, though, we'll look at it as like the size of a company, right? So either their average revenue, their gross sales, number of employees, things of that nature. There are businesses that have, you know, a lower end of the number of employees that they have, but they do generate enough revenue to be considered a middle market account. And so that's when we start looking at the complexity of the account, right? So the complexity of the account is kind of like the next thing. An industry, business type, you know, just the underlying details of what that business looks like, where they're located sometimes is even a thing, right? So where that company is located, what are their what are their laws in their states? Like, is it more complicated to write that business, or is it less complicated to write that business? Do they need physical risk management, right? Do they need physical risk management on site? Things like that. We generally derive that from industry and size a lot of times. And by size, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt, Kylie. Do you have a scoring mechanism to understand the complexity of an account? Is it kind of done by feel, or like how do you get to the bottom of understanding how complex they're going to be and what kind of needs they're going to need?
Yeah, I mean, we do it pretty surface level when we first get, those opportunities, particularly when we're out searching for those opportunities, right? A lot of our middle market guys and a lot of our middle market strategy is that networking strategy, right? Like we have guys that are going out and using their connections and our networking opportunities that present to themselves, so then they can kind of pick and choose. But we generally subscribe to the average revenue of our, like the company revenue, to determine if that's something that they should or should not be working on, right? I mean, ours depends on which branch they're in and which location they're in, because we are very community oriented. But there's, like, everybody does it a little bit. It might be 5,000 in revenue, it might be 10,000 in revenue, depending on, and that's agency revenue, depending. So from our middle market standpoint, generally, like if they're out looking, they're out prospecting, they're going to look at it kind of from that perspective. Now, if we're looking at like our marketing team and our business development center, we're utilizing, that's this logo right here. We have a business development center called INSURICA, and they do a lot of our outbound marketing. They do a lot of our campaign development that we're starting to do. And so in that case, we're taking a look from a data perspective of, right, we want to have a specific industry campaign. So we go out and we do data analytics basically on saying, and we break down our book of business to say this XYZ. So let's say it's a roustabout has to have, 20 employees and $2 million in gross annual revenue for it to generate generally X number of revenue. So we can kind of figure out who we're looking at. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad or a good prospect, but that's how we'll decide kind of what level of revenue we're trying to generate off of a campaign. And so we'll go out and we'll do those analytics to figure out what kind of company we're looking for, and then we'll go look for those companies and who we want to engage with. And so, we might be doing specific marketing reach out or business development for our small business unit. And if that's the case, we go out and we look for that specific criteria that will then generate us X number of dollars in revenue. If we give them, we know a lot about our average lifespan on an account. We know a lot about, the number of attempts it's going to take to get somebody to answer us. Like, we know a lot about how each kind of segment and business unit will respond. And so that cost factor and that profitability factor runs into that too. So just knowing that book of business, and just really looking at the analytics of saying, all right, in this industry, this size of business in this location is going to give us generally X number of revenue. So when we talk about segmentation, we get really, really granular like that. And then we also just kind of get granular in the space of, does a customer, let's say we already wrote the customer, right? Somebody in our middle market wrote the customer, and it's probably too small to be handled profitably in that book of business, then we send it to our small business unit. And so a lot of what we do is figure out within a book of business, like which commercial accounts need to be handled in middle market versus which accounts need to be handled in our digital unit.
So share as much as you want to, and as far as how you guys do it, but break down the middle market, the small, and like what goes in there. What are the parameters, I guess, and then service models attached to those.
Right. It would probably, I can give a little, it might be good to like just have a little history on what we consider our digital unit, right? We used to call it our small commercial unit. We're really trying to twist that name more to our digital unit now. We're calling it INSURICA Direct. And that is because the definition of small is changing every day. Everybody feels that, right? So how somebody gets handled and the service model, the sales and service model of who needs to be in what division is really how we look at it now. So our small commercial unit, now that our digital unit started as a service model to our middle market branches, right? So we understood, we have some really great leadership that just really understands like the numbers and profitability, and understands like it's an 80-20 rule, right? 20% of your customers are generally going to make 80% of your revenue. But we as INSURICA specialize in you, right? That's our motto. And so we didn't want to just, and we're also very community based too, right? Our brands are well known in our communities, not necessarily on a grandiose scale. And we didn't want to do anything to hurt that, right? We still believe in that community aspect of what we do. And so we needed to figure out a service model that allowed our middle market branches to focus on their middle market accounts and service those in a way that were profitable and helpful, and give those service teams areas to grow, without telling, the dentist down the street who is friends with our producer, no, we can't write you, you're too small.
I think we heard about that dentist last time.
It's my favorite.
The coffee, yeah.
Yeah, it's my favorite example because it's so funny, because it's just like, okay, well, it's just so true, right? Especially if you're a community-based agency, that totally. you don't want to have to tell anybody no. We want to be able to have, for the most part, we want to be able to tell the people who are connected to our community, yes. And so it was originally INSURICA Express. Now it's INSURICA Direct. We built this service model to where, producers in the middle market originally they could write that account first year and then roll it over to our service team, who would then service it from there on out. It's a hybrid of, we've seen a lot of different variation of this over the past 8 years. As we've built it, I feel really solid on where we've landed now, to where we have, we have sales teams to where we have true producers doing pretty much nothing but focusing on new business. They're focusing on new business leads and opportunities that are generally produced for them, but they bring their own opportunities as well. They have a book of business similar to a middle market producer. They just do it from their desk, right? They just don't have to go out into the field and spend their days networking. They can handle a lot more business in that way. So we have, small middle market accounts in a section. We have then just like a smaller, like anything that's smaller goes into basically what we've called our account management team this whole time. So they're hybrid production account management staff, if you will. So there are people that service and sell. There are people, so kind of like an account executive style. And then there are just true service people, right, that are focused on maintaining our customers that are coming over. And then they're focused on cross-sell, right? So cross-sell, upsell, making sure that they have as many opportunities and as many lines of business with that customer as possible. So it's all segmented by size, even in that direct unit, right? We're segmenting in between middle market and direct, but we're also segmenting inside of our direct units as well, because we understand that the service models of each one of those sections have to be different. We even have like a micro business section that is like a whole nother, to where, you know, we're utilizing sales centers, but we do have sales and service ability for those micro businesses, the really, really small stuff. So that way we can still say yes to as much as we possibly can.
So just break this down so that I understand it, and hopefully everybody then listening can understand it. You've got the middle market and then the INSURICA direct.
Mm-hmm.
And is it determined what goes in there? I mean, slightly off of size, but that's more the complexity and the service model we want to drive. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was originally, like, historically it was based on size. Historically it was. And then now over time, we've kind of figured out that it's not necessarily size driven, it's complexity driven.
Who makes that determination for you then on the front end? Like, you bring in a new account, who determines, does it go direct or middle market?
So it depends on where the account comes from, right? If a middle market producer produces that account on their own, like, they kind of get to choose. I mean, there's a level of revenue that, like, if they write it, they're not going to get paid on it, right? That's like, that's a normal model these days. So if they choose to write it, that's their decision. And then eventually when that happens, like, if they write it, eventually it'll get what we call rolled over into our service model, to where it goes into INSURICA Direct, and it's assigned to basically a new account manager that handles that business year over year after that, and then handles them with all their mid-year service things. If it's, you know, if it's a business development center type situation, to where we're outbound marketing those people and we generate something to bring in, or a lot of our leads are you know, we're going to Bold Penguin, we're purchasing them from somewhere, we have referral partnerships from all over the place. You know, we're working with other brokerages, and we're working with other people to generate referral opportunities for like, let's say we write, you know, manufacturing that does, you know, has international exposure or something that another brokerage isn't comfortable writing, or they don't have the appointment set to be able to handle a lead like that. We'll work out, you know, referral deals with other brokerages to be able to handle those on their behalf or for them. So those leads come in to our business development center, INSURICA Connect, and then we have built a data model basically that says these are the criteria that we need to ask. So they basically do a pre-interview of that customer and then kind of gather that information, and then we have data models in the background telling them where those need to go. So it's a pretty complex idea of data analysis that we've dove into, and pretty complex channels of determining what goes where. And I don't think that like I could tell everybody my model today and how we determine that, but like that works for us. That doesn't necessarily, right? That's like my big advice to other brokerages is just understand the book of business, and then you can figure out who's doing what best, because it's not going to look the same. It's just not going to look the same. But we have some tools and some mechanisms. You know, we're a Salesforce based shop, and so we're collecting that data, and then we have some machine learning models that we're learning to figure out, and have programmed to figure out and tell us like what types of businesses are good and are not. So that helps us build kind of those, you know, and it's down to like which ones are working and which ones are not. It's down to a literal green, yellow, red system of, as our data comes in, it looks at it over a certain amount of time, and based on our parameters that we have determined are good, it tells us which ones we should and shouldn't be writing, and generally tells us where those things should land and go. Nice. Yeah.
I'm sure Ryan's got a few thoughts on that, but I want to dive down this track a little more to kind of help everybody understand it. So you determine that, and then it goes into the direct, let's say, which is traditionally more of that small business.
Small business, yeah.
So then what do you attribute to the profitability there? Because I know this is what a ton of agencies, I mean, most of our firms are built on small business, right? And it is the 80-20 rule, but we have a lot of accounts that sit in that small business that, to your point, we're all community based or, for the most part out there. And we have to have a way to deal with that type of business because, these are connected. We want to be able to say yes, like you said. So what do you attribute in your model to being able to drive a profit margin that's appropriate for that segment?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple just key things that are profitability drivers. Efficiency. I know there's this talk of like efficiency is not necessarily the right word, because efficiency tends to get utilized in the tune of like technology, and that's not necessarily the case. Like
lean systems is another way to say that.
Lean systems is another way to say that. We're writing business in that unit just like anybody else would, right? We're gathering the information. We're going out to carrier raters. We do have some efficiency tools though that are helpful, right? We have multi-raters that are helpful. We have other, making sure that we have a CRM that's capable and useful is and something that people will want to use, not necessarily like have to use. I know it's like sometimes pulling teeth to get people and producers to put things into a CRM, but we've made our CRMs and our platforms tools that we think are efficiency drivers for our producers and our account managers. Good processes in handling the pass off of the business, handling the sale of that business, specializing where everybody's lanes are is probably the biggest thing, right? Specializing the lanes of the actual humans that are doing the job, and making sure everybody knows where their job accounts within the workflow is key. I mean, if you don't have an efficient process model, you will not. Humans are the most expensive part of any small business organization, but they're also the most important, because I will argue all day long, you cannot replace the expertise of a human in a brokerage with a robot. You can't do it. I don't want to do it. I have no interest. I don't even have any interest in trying. I know that's a lot of people are scared of that, but I think that's just, humans are too important in the process, but they are the most expensive. That is the most expensive part. So having a lean process, a very streamlined, well thought out, here are the steps of the process of how we get this customer through this process. And what do you do, right? And that goes down to even servicing, right? So it's streamlined processes in servicing, making sure that everybody knows the steps that have to happen for XYZ to go through properly. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast is one of my favorite lines ever. It's okay if you're not speeding through everything, but as long as things are moving smoothly, it will go fast. If you get bottlenecked somewhere, that is a killer to a small business process. And I think that is where we have really shined, is making sure that there are not bottlenecks in our service processes, in our sales processes too. We've built out ways and understand each member of our team has a place, and they each have a job that is equally as important to the next person's job. And we break that process out very strategically.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me about that, just to pull a couple themes out of there, is you didn't say some technology solution or, we bought this thing and it completely revolutionized it. It's all around, process and how we handle the business and what we do for that client, and really thinking about that deeply, and anybody can do that. You know, you don't have to be INSURICA with a big budget to do that. You can do it tomorrow. And and then you were talking about you believe the humans are an integral piece of this. I agree. And to give a little plug for Ryan Hanley, he always uses the human optimized,
I just
terminology.
listened to that podcast. That's why I almost hated to throw out the word efficiency, because I believe him so much. I'm like, I agree. I was listening to that version of his podcast, and I was like, yes.
I'm sure I'm going to get an invoice for the royalty on that human optimized.
Yeah.
But and then in that podcast, he brought up a very good point at the start where he said, he believes, and I agree with him, that you don't need a human to sell insurance a lot of times. You know, there's a lot of technology that can do it. You know, it can go direct. Not that it's the best way to do it, but it can sell it. But he said you 100% need a human to retain it and to service it and do it.
Yeah, my opinion on the selling is it depends on the business. I believe, and you will hear me say this over and over and over again, I think it very much mirrors something that Ryan recently said, was you meet the customer where they want to be met, right?
Yeah.
So we like to meet the customer where they want to be met. If they want to be met online, we will meet them online. If they want to be met on the phone, we will meet them over the phone. If they want to talk to somebody, though, you can't replace that. If that customer indicates, I want to talk to somebody, that means that you have more opportunity to actually close that sale. And we have done a lot of, there's value in a storefront. There's value in a marketplace. There's value in meeting that Google customer who's just really unsure of what they want and need. Or maybe they're really sure that they think that they know what they want and need, and then they get through the process and they're like, oh, I don't know if this is what I need, right? Like sometimes they literally just need a pat on the back and saying, yes, you're doing this right. So sometimes you don't need a lot of human interaction for that sale, but I highly believe, and there are pieces of that, like we'll meet them online and we'll send them through a process to get most of the way. But because we know that we also are expertise advisors, and we want to make sure that they're not just getting a piece of paper that doesn't mean anything to them. Sometimes we'll interject ourselves and say, no, you can't go on by yourself. You have to talk to somebody, because we want to make sure, and that's a value proposition for INSURICA. We understand that not everybody feels the need to do that. I think that it's fair to say that some buyers may be perfectly well educated to go and bind a semi-complex general liability policy / property policy on their own, but we prefer, from a sales and retention standpoint, to start that relationship with them in the middle. But I totally agree. Like, you can't retain, you might be able to sell business, you can't retain business without a human in the middle.
Yeah.
So
no, I thought you were spot on there.
Kylie, real quick, going back to your processes and whatnot, and the people that are involved in those processes. I'm curious your perspective on the sales team. It's like they've built their book from the ground up, specializing in probably some of these smaller accounts, right? It's like, I think is it Andrew Atkinson? He's like, all right, you first start and the bus is empty, right? And you got all these empty seats, and you fill all the seats on the bus till the seats are full, and then you're like, oh no, well, I need to make more room on the bus. And so what we found is that it's fairly difficult to, unless the people are just driven this way, they kind of get to this full bus and they don't know what to do.
Right.
So, like, I guess 2 questions as it relates to that. Number one, did you have any resistance or pushback from the sales team on, oh my gosh, how are you going to take care of these accounts? And no, I have to be involved in these accounts because I brought them on this way and they have certain expectations and da. And then, how have you been able to transition their mindset as it relates to that?
Yeah, that is a great question, because the answer to that is yes. It took a lot of work to get the middle market producers and the middle market branches, I don't want to say on board. I think generally we have built a culture of somewhat adopting change okay. So I don't want to say that it was necessarily, they were just protective, right? They were protective of the business that they had built.
Sure.
Some of the accounts, they were like happy to have it, right? They were like, you know what, you can have this account tomorrow. So
Yeah.
INSURICA Express kind of started out as like a dumping ground of like really terrible accounts, right? And this is when we were really only a service model. We weren't doing a ton of new business sales for our branches, and we have a profit share with our middle market accounts, with our middle market teams and branches. So anything that gets put to INSURICA Express or INSURICA Direct now, anything that we retain, they get a part of every single year.
That's cool.
We are starting, like, we do that with our own middle market accounts. An interesting thing that we're starting to find that there might be opportunities for, brokerages that don't want to go down this road of building this model. It's expensive and it takes a lot of time and a lot of people to handle that much volume. And so we're at a place where we can scale really easily, which is nice. Really easily, that is a general term, right? Hiring is hard. Employment is hard right now. Recruiting is hard right now. But in terms of the systems and the models, like, we can scale pretty easily. So it's been an interesting thing to see, like, all right, we could maybe do this for other people too. And everybody has skin in the game. So I think that helps, right? For everybody to know, like, they're still going to get a piece of the pie. Their book is not going to dwindle like completely, because they're still getting a part of that profit, especially if it makes up a big part of their book from a base level standpoint. To get people on board, though, we really just had to show them that we were good at what we were doing. We really had to just prove that we were educated, right? Sometimes you think about models like that, and I think there was just this original stigma that, like, oh, these people are newbies, they don't know what they're doing, they don't know how to talk to people like we know how to talk to people. And we just had to prove a little bit over time that actually, like, we can speak coverage just as good as anybody else, right? Like, we've had as much exposure or more exposure to accounts than anyone. We use it as a training ground now, which is funny, right? We use our small business and our INSURICA Direct unit as a training ground for middle market now, because my boss calls it getting at bats, right? Like, you get so many more at bats to understand how to interpret risk, and how to handle that in a marketplace, right? How to do a submission, how to work with a wholesale broker, how to work with a carrier, how do you work with an account management team? Like, just learning the fundamentals of how you write an account. You just get so many opportunities to do that you just inherently learn how to write risk really well. And like I said, it was a dumping ground for bad accounts. So it's not like we're sitting here on a bunch of, particularly in the beginning, our business has grown to have all kinds of things. But it's like, somebody would send us the hairiest of hairy guy that's only making, $50,000 in gross annual revenue, but you still have to write him, right? And at that time, and still to this day, like, if one of our branches or one of our partners sends us a lead, we're going to try to write it. It doesn't matter what it is. If we're out, sourcing leads, then that's a little bit of a different story. But if it's a direct referral from one of our partners or one of our branches, we're trying to write it. So that guy could, like, literally be hot tarring roofs at a commercial auto dealership, and we'd say okay, and we'd figure out how to write it. I bring that up because we had a funny claim one time that came off that exact guy that I'm thinking of. But I mean, that's just like, that's generally not an easy account to necessarily write. So you get a lot of chop. So we had to prove ourselves to our middle market producers to say, hey, I promise you we're going to take care of this. I promise you we know what we're talking about. And then the renewal numbers start coming in and they see how good their renewal rates on that business are. And they'll talk to their clients too, right? A lot of their clients, sometimes when we like go to renew them the next year, they don't even realize we're not in the same office, right? We're treating them so well that they just didn't even realize that we weren't a part of that office. And we represent their office. We do a really good job. That's a big part of it too, is like whatever office that particular account came from, we make sure we reference that. We make sure we create that connection to whoever that lead really belongs to. So it's like we're building books of business for other people, basically. And I think there's a lot to be said in that too. It's just the general tone of how it's just really pleasant, right? We've created an experience that is pleasant for them.
Yeah.
Probably more attention being paid to them in this environment than would be at the middle market environment.
Yeah. Yeah, so if I'm a middle market producer and I bring in one of these and I make the determination it can go to INSURICA direct, do you still compensate me for that?
Yes.
Is it a different, is it the same compensation model? Okay.
There's a commission between it, and it's year over year, right? So we're giving back a percentage of that revenue back to the producers.
Is that the profit share model you were talking about, or is it just a straight revenue share?
That's the profit. It's just a straight revenue share.
Got it. Makes sense.
We still write under a lot of their different agency codes for like contingency purposes. So like if it came from them, most likely, like sometimes that'll land. We have ways to where their profit share can be separated out of and still be contributed back to the end. We do contingency a little bit differently because of those situations.
Gotcha. Oh wow, I feel like we could go for hours on this,
I
know. And it's
Me
already
Me too.
I know we've already been at it for a while, but there's so much good stuff in there, and I hope everybody kind of takes away a lot of stuff from the standpoint that technology doesn't have to be the answer, right? I think that's always a good one to think. Like there's a lot of good uses for technology, but it's not. A lot of times it doesn't have the impact we want unless we have the foundation necessary for the technology to be implemented. And that's what comes to everything you're talking about is if you didn't have these processes and everything that you mentioned, implementing a technology is not going to just fix the small business unit overnight.
No,
right?
It'll make it worse. To be honest. Like, we've tried it. I get a little excited about technology every once in a while, and sometimes I've jumped the gun, right? I've implemented something that I shouldn't have. I've implemented something that we weren't ready for, right? Yeah. And that costs time and money and training that nobody's really ready for too. So I would highly recommend working with the technology that you have now and investing in, if you're just now getting into this idea, like investing in smart technology first, technology that's really going to move your needle, investing in those, basic CRM, basic agency management systems, basic communication systems, put your investments there and then go to the fancy technologies after you have your processes figured out.
Yeah. I think we should do one, Elliot, at some point on your ideal tech stack in an agency.
Ooh, yeah.
That would be a fun one. We asked that of somebody. I can't remember. We'll have to go back and look, but that would be a good one
to see what each brokerage or broker. I feel like it'd be very different depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah, that would be fun. That'd be a good series.
Panel discussion.
Oh, there you go.
Ooh.
We might be onto something. All right. Cool. Well, that was good. I'm sure Kylie will have you on again because these are always good and insightful, and maybe on the panel. We'll see.
Yeah, I'd love to. I always love chatting with you guys.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks for coming on, Kylie.
Yeah, have a good week.
You too.
All
See
right.
you later.
Thank you for tuning in to Getting Past the Premium. We are excited to continue breaking down barriers and finding solutions together. If you would like to reach out regarding anything you heard in today's episode, find links and contact info in the description. Until next time, have a great day, and let's continue getting past the premium.